making your bed. Okay? If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task and another and another. By the end of the day, the one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you will never do the big things. From Admiral McRaven's University of Texas commencement speech. Okay, and you can actually find this on YouTube and also on Facebook. Okay, so to my three children, Bill, John, and Kelly, no father could be prouder of his kids than I am of you. Every moment of my life has been made better because you are in the world. And to my wife, Georgianne, my best friend who made all my dreams possible, where would I be without you? Chapter 1. Make your bed. Chapter 1. Start the day with a task complete. The barracks at Basic SEAL Training is a non-script, 3-story building located on the beach of Coronado, California, just 100 yards from the Pacific Ocean. There is no air conditioning in the building, and at night, with the windows open, you can hear the tide roll in and the surf pounding against the sand. Rooms in the barracks are Spartan. And the officer's room where I berthed with 3 other classmates, there were 4 beds, a closet to hang your uniforms, and nothing else. Those mornings that I stayed in the barracks, I would roll out of my Navy rack and immediately begin the process of making my bed. It was the first task of the day, a day that I knew would be filled with uniform inspections, long swims, long runs, obstacle courses, constant harassment from the SEAL instructors. "Attention," shouted the class leader. Lieutenant Junior Grade Dan Seward as the instructor entered the room. Standing at the foot of the bed, I snapped my heels together and stood straight up as a chief petty officer approached my position. The instructor, stern and expressionless, began the inspection by checking the starch in my green uniform hat to ensure that the 8-sided cover was crisp and correctly blocked. Moving from top to bottom, his eyes looked over every inch of my uniform. Were the creases in the blouse and trousers aligned? Was the brass on the belt shined to a mirror-like radiance? Were my boots polished bright enough so he could see his fingers and their reflection? Satisfied that I met the high standards expected of a SEAL trainee, he moved to inspect the bed. The bed was as simple as the room, nothing but a steel frame and a single mattress. A bottom sheet covered the mattress, and over that was a top sheet. A gray wool blanket tucked tightly under the mattress provided warmth from the cool San Diego evenings. A second blanket was expertly folded into a rectangle at the foot of the bed. A single pillow made by the lighthouse for the blind was centered at the top of the bed and intersected at a 90-degree angle with the blanket at the bottom. This was the standard. Any deviation from this exacting requirement would be cause for me to hit the surf and then roll around on the beach until I was covered head to toe with wet sand, referred to as a sugar cookie. Standing motionless, I could see the instructor out of the corner of my eye. He warily looked at my bed, bending over. He checked the hospital corners, and they surveyed the blanket and the pillow to ensure they were correctly aligned. Then, reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a quarter and flipped it into the air several times to ensure I knew final test of the bed was coming. With final flip, the quarter flew into the air and came down on the mattress with a light bounce. It jumped several inches off the bed, high enough for the instructor to catch it in his hand. Swinging around to face me, the instructor looked me in the eye and nodded. He never said a word. Making my bed correctly was not going to be an opportunity for praise. It was expected of me. It was my first task of the day, and doing it right was important. It demonstrated my discipline. It showed my attention to detail. At the end of the day, it would be a reminder that I had done something well, something to be proud of, no matter how small the task. Throughout my life in the Navy, making my bed was the one constant that I could count on every day. As a young SEAL ensign aboard the USS Grayback, a special operations submarine, I was berthed in the sick bay, where the beds were stacked 4 high. The salty old doctor who ran sick bay instead insisted that I make my rack every morning. He often remarked that if the beds were not made and the room was not clean, how could the sailors expect the best medical care? As I later found out, the sentiment of cleanliness and order applied to every aspect of military life. 30 years later, the Twin Towers came down in New York City. The Pentagon was struck, and brave Americans died in the airplane over Pennsylvania. At the time of the attacks, I was recuperating in my home from a serious parachute accident. A hospital bed had been wheeled into my government quarters, and I spent most of the day lying on my back, trying to recover. I wanted out of that bed more than anything else. Like every SEAL, I longed to be with my fellow warriors in the fight. When I was finally well enough to lift myself unaided from the bed, the first thing I did was pull the sheets up tight, adjusted the pillow, and make sure the hospital bed looked presentable to all those who entered my home. It was my way of showing that I had conquered the injury and was moving forward with my life. Within 4 weeks of 9/11, I was transferred to the White House, where I spent the next 2 years in the newly formed office of the combating terrorism. By October 2003, I was in Iraq at our makeshift headquarters on the Baghdad airfield. For the first few months, we slept on army cots. Nevertheless, I would wake every morning, roll up my sleeping bag, place the pillow at the head of the cot, and get ready for the day. In December 2003, U.S. forces captured Saddam Hussein. He was held in confinement, during which time he kept him in a small room. He also slept on an army cot, but with the luxury of sheets and a blanket. Once a day, I would visit Saddam to ensure my soldiers were properly caring for him. I noticed with some sense of amusement that Saddam did not make his bed. The covers were always crumpled at the foot of his cot, and he rarely seemed to incline to straighten them. During the ensuing 10 years, I had the honor of working with some of the finest men and women this nation has ever produced, from generals to privates, from admirals to seamen, recruits, from ambassadors to clerks, typists. The Americans who deployed overseas in support of the war effort came willingly, sacrificing much to protect this great nation. They all understood that life is hard and that sometimes there is little you can do to affect the outcome of your day. In battle, soldiers die, families grieve. Your days are long and filled with anxious moments. You search for something that can give you solace, that can motivate you to begin your day, that can be a sense of pride in an oftentimes ugly world. But it is not just combat, it is daily life that needs the same sense of structure. Nothing can replace the strength and comfort of one's faith, but sometimes a simple act of making your bed can give you the lift you need to start your day and provide you the satisfaction to end it right. If you want to change your life and maybe the world, start off by making your bed. Chapter 2. You can't go it alone. If you want to change the world, find someone to help you paddle. I learned early on in SEAL training the value of teamwork, the need to rely on someone else to help you through difficult tasks. For those of us who were tadpoles, hoping to become Navy frogmen, a 10-foot rubber raft was used to teach us this vital lesson. Everywhere we went during the first phase of SEAL training, we were required to carry the raft. We placed it on our heads as we ran from the barracks across the highway to the chow hall. We carried in the low slung position as we ran up and down the Coronado sand dunes. We paddled the boat endlessly from north to south along the coastline and through the pounding surf. 7 men, all working together to get the rubber boat to its final destination. We learned something else on our journey. With the raft, occasionally one of the boat crew members was sick or injured, unable to give it 100%. I often found myself exhausted from the training day or down with a cold or flu. On those days, the other members picked up the slack. They paddled harder. They dug deeper. They gave me their rations for extra strength. And when the time came later in training, I returned the favor. The small rubber boat made us realize that no man could make it through training alone. No SEAL could make it through combat alone. And by extension, you need people in your life to help you through the difficult times. Never was the need for help more apparent to me than 25 years later when I commanded all the SEALs on the West Coast. I was the Commodore of Naval Special Warfare Group 1 in Coronado, a Navy captain. I had by now spent the past several decades landing SEALs around the world. I was out for a routine parachute jump when things went terribly wrong. We were in a C-130 Hercules aircraft climbing to 12,000 feet, preparing for a jump. Looking out the back of the aircraft, we could see a beautiful California day, not a cloud in the sky. The Pacific Ocean was calm, and from this altitude, you could see the border of Mexico, just a few miles away. The jump master yelled to stand by. Now, on the edge of the ramp, I could see straight down to the ground. The jump master looked me in the eye, smiled, and shouted, "Go, go, go!" I dove out of the aircraft, arms fully extended and legs tucked slightly behind my back. The prop blasted from the aircraft sent me tilting forward until my arms caught air and I leveled out. I quickly checked my altimeter, made sure I wasn't spinning, and then looked around me to ensure no jumper was too close to me. 20 seconds later, I had fallen to the full altitude of 5,500 feet. Suddenly, I looked below me, and another jumper had slid beneath me. Intersecting my path to the ground, he pulled his ripcord, and I could see the pilot chute deploying the main parachute from his backpack. Immediately, I thrust my arms to my side, forcing my head to the ground in an attempt to get away from the blossoming chute. It was too late. The jumper's chute popped open in front of me like an airbag, hitting me at 120 miles an hour. I bounced off the main canopy and spun out of control, barely conscious from the impact. For seconds, I spun head over heels, trying to get stable again. I couldn't see altimeter and was unaware of how far I had fallen. Instinctively, I reached for my ripcord and pulled. The pilot chute jettisoned from its small pouch in the back of the parachute, but wrapped around my leg as I continued to tumble toward the ground. As I struggled to untangle myself, the situation got worse. The main parachute partially deployed, but in doing so, twirled around my other leg. Craning my neck toward the sky, I could see my legs were bound by two sets of risers, the long nylon straps that connected the main parachute to the harness on my back. One riser had wrapped around one leg, the other riser around the other leg. The main parachute was fully out of the backpack, but hung up somewhere on my body. As I struggled to break free of the entanglement, suddenly I felt the canopy lift off my body and began to open. Looking toward my legs, I knew what was coming next. Within seconds, the canopy caught air. The two risers, one wrapped around each leg, suddenly and violently pulled apart, taking my legs with them. My pelvis separated instantly as the force of the opening ripped my lower torso. The second small muscles that connected the pelvis to my body were torn from their hinges. My mouth dropped open and I let out a scream that could be heard in Mexico. Searing pain ached through my body, sending waves pulsating downward to my pelvis and upward to my head. Violent and muscular convulsions racked my upper torso, shooting more pain through my arms and legs. Now, like having an out-of-body experience, I became aware of my screaming and tried to control it, but the pain was too intense. Still head down and falling too fast, I turned myself upright in the harness, relieving some of the pressure on my pelvis and back. 1,500 feet, I had fallen over 4,000 feet before the parachute deployed. The good news, I had a full canopy over my head. The bad news, I was broken apart by the impact of the opening. I landed over 2 miles from the drop zone. Within a few minutes, the drop zone crew and an ambulance arrived. I was taken to the trauma hospital in downtown San Diego. By the next day, I was out of surgery. The accident had ripped my pelvis apart by almost 5 inches. The muscles in my stomach had become detached from the pelvis bone, and the muscles in my back and legs were severely damaged from the opening shock. I had a large titanium plate screwed into my pelvis and a long scapulated screw drilled into my backside for stability. This seemed like the end of my career. To be an effective SEAL, you had to be physically fit. My rehabilitation was going to take months, maybe years, and the Navy was required to conduct a medical evaluation to determine if I was fit for duty. I left the hospital 7 days later, but remained bedridden at my home for the next 2 months. All my life, I had the feeling I was invincible. I believed my innate athletic abilities could get me out of most perilous situations, and up to this point, I have been right. Many times during my career, I encountered life-threatening, life incidences, mid-air collisions in another parachute, uncontrolled descent in a mini-sub, nearly falling hundreds of feet off an oil rig, getting trapped beneath a sinking boat, demolition that exploded prematurely, and countless more incidents where a split second decided the fate between living and dying. Each time, I had somehow managed to make the right decision, and each time I was physically fit enough to overcome the challenge before me. Not this time. Now, lying in bed, all I felt was self-pity. But that would not last for long. My wife, George Ann, had been giving nursing duties. She cleaned my wounds, gave me the required daily shots, and changed my bedpan. But most importantly, she reminded me of who I was. I had never given up on anything in my life, and I assured me that I was not going to start now. She refused to let me feel sorry for myself. It was the kind of tough love that I needed, and as the days went by, I got better. My friends came by the house, called constantly, and helped with whatever they could. My boss, Admiral Eric Olson, somehow found a way around the policy that required the Navy to conduct a medical evaluation of my ability to continue to serve as a SEAL. His support for me likely saved my career. During my time in the SEAL teams, I had numerous setbacks. In each case, someone came forward to help me. Someone who had faith in my abilities, someone who saw potential in me where others might not, someone who risked their own reputation to advance my career. I have never forgotten those people, and I know that anything I achieved in my life was a result of others who have helped me along the way. None of us are immune from life's tragic moments. Like the small rubber boat we had in basic SEAL training, it takes a team of good people to get you to your destination in life. You cannot paddle a boat alone. Find someone to share your life with. Make as many friends as possible, and never forget your success depends on others. Stop on chapter 3. Get the next book. Max Lucado. We are on Max Lucado now. We're on chapter 5. The only one in you. He gave his only son. Alright. Hold on real quick.